and welcome everybody to the part 3 of the Woman Witness podcast reunion on the Woman Witness TV network. I am so excited to have you all here for our part 3 special. We are joined by 3 incredible women that will give us a recap and catch us up with what they have been up to since their last visit here at the well. And today we are bringing back from season 3. Season 3, we met Stephanie Strickland, whose story of overcoming domestic abuse and finding peace from and through self-reflection, faith, and mixed martial arts. Her story deeply resonated with so many that we definitely had to have her come back to the well and share what she has been up to. She has inspired us through her book that debuted called Finding Peace Within. Her message of hope and resilience was transformational. Hi, Stephanie. Welcome back to the well. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I'm excited to be back.
Well, I'm so excited to have you back, and I can't wait to find out what you've been up to. In season 2, we were joined by Carrita Flie, who shared her emotional journey from miscarriage to motherhood, highlighting her advocacy for NICU families and Black maternal health. Her story as both Miss Illinois and also a PhD student reflects her dedication to supporting women and families in these challenging times. Carrita Flie, welcome back to the well. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me back.
I am so excited to have you back, and I can't wait to find out what you've been up to. We have some title changes here going on. And lastly, but not least, we have a special treat. Her episode has yet to air. She is from our season 3. We are welcoming Miss Sewa Fields. Miss Sewa Fields is an author and a domestic abuse survivor. She spoke on the complexities of healing from a cultural and religious trauma, and her advocacy for ending violence against women remains an inspiration. Hey, Sewa, welcome back to the well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you back. Hey, ladies, I want you to lean in a little bit as we take a look back at these wonderful women and their stories and let them tell us and fill us in as to what they've been up to in the past year. Okay, so I just kind of want to look back. I want to give everyone opportunities to tell their stories. I kind of want to start right there in the middle with our guest, Miss Carrita Flie. Miss Carrita Flie from season 2, you came on and you shared your heartfelt story going from miscarriage to motherhood, and you touched so many with your story. I want to catch up with you. I see there has been a couple title changes, some different things that's popped up in your life. Tell us what has changed since you have last been here on the well.
Oh my goodness. Well, the biggest one, I am now Mrs. Illinois for the Black United States pageant. My very first pageant ever. So this is like huge for me. And I feel like it came at the perfect time in my life. We did talk about on my episode miscarriage to motherhood. And right before I recorded with you, I had undergone a total hysterectomy as well. And so that was very life changing for me. It was one of those things where, you know, it takes away what you feel like is your womanhood, right? What takes away what makes you beautiful, what makes you a woman, being able to bear children, things of that nature. And so being in a space now where I'm able to highlight beauty in so many different capacities and not just, what I have inside or don't have inside. And I know that's going to resonate with so many other women as well. Women who struggle with infertility, women who have gone through miscarriages, women who cannot bear children. That doesn't define our beauty and who we are and what we can contribute to this world. So I'm super excited about this new journey that I'm on with the pageant because it's not just about me. It's about other women who are like me and who will walk in my shoes one day or have already walked in my shoes to know that that's not what defines you and how you should define your beauty.
Oh, I absolutely love that, Carrita. I love how courageous you are. It's so interesting how God works. He will maybe perhaps close one door or what may feel like a closed door to you and open up so many. And I'm in awe with you because you always take every opportunity to go back and share your story and with so much grace. I mean, giving women so much hope. Like, man, if God can do it for her, he must have something in store for me. So, Carrita, I absolutely adore you and adore your story. And next, Miss Stephanie. Oh my goodness, Stephanie, you have been doing such amazing things. I am so taken back by when you came on and you shared your story from finding peace from within. And man, you displayed so much peace telling your story. And I believe, and I know for a fact, we've had both of us has had people reach out to us telling us how effective your story was just with you being vulnerable and coming out and sharing what you have overcame and what you have been through. Talk to us about your journey a little bit. Just fill us in, for those who may not know, and tell us where you have been since your last visit here at the well.
Once again, I want to say thank you for having me back on the show. Like you said, I am a survivor of domestic violence. I was in an abusive marriage for over 26 years. When I finally found the courage to leave that, I was in my 40s and I basically started my life all over. And when I say abusive, I'm not just saying the physical, it was the emotional, it was the mental, it was the verbal, the financial, the sexual, it was all of that. And so after 26 years, I left that. And when God gave me the courage to leave, because that's what it was, the courage to leave, I made a promise to myself and to God that I was going to not be quiet about it. I was going to share my story and that I was going to help other women who were in similar situations. And that's what I've been doing. I volunteered at shelters. I've been facilitating some classes. I've been doing workshop, talking at women conferences. I'm also working on my second book, which is more like a workbook to help women who are coming out of these situations, as well as women who are still in them and just feel like they have no hope on getting out. So I've been pretty busy.
Yes, you have. Oh, come on with that second book. Your first book, your first book was absolutely amazing. I know God is putting you to work on that one. So keep doing what you're doing. I love it. We can't wait to hear more about what you're up to throughout our interview today. Miss Sewa, thank you so much for coming. Miss Sewa, you talked about your journey and you shared so much from being in a cross-cultural relationship, to your domestic abuse that you've experienced. And your story was so inspirational. And I know it hasn't came out yet, but I know that your message was so powerful that it's going to touch the lives of so many, that I absolutely had to have you on so you can speak a little bit about it. Give us a little sneak peek of what our interview and what our conversation was about.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, it's so great to be on the show and just talk a little bit about just the cycle of domestic violence and how for so long, for so many years, and I can relate to you, Stephanie, for so many years, I was in that cycle, hoping for the best, wanting that relationship to work with my partner. And I think at one point, we talked about this in our podcast, I think for the sake of my child and for what she was seeing in our home, I realized in that moment that I needed to give her a home that was full of safety and security and love. And even though I didn't believe that for myself at that time, I knew that she deserved better. And that was really the turning point that caused me to finally get out. I was in that relationship. I was married for 8 years. And so it took me a while too to finally see the cycle and finally find my worth and know that I had the strength to be able to get out. And so now I've been out of that for about 9 years. And now one of the things I've realized through my story is one of the reasons I got out is because I heard other women's stories, and it gave me so much awareness to my story. And I had so many light bulb moments that other women's stories of domestic abuse was so similar to mine. And I realized for the first time that one, I wasn't alone, two, that this wasn't my fault, and three, that this cycle was only going to escalate over time. And so it really helped me to get out of that situation and stay out. And so I think that's one of the main reasons why now I share my story on a regular basis. I'm open and vulnerable about it so that someone else who might be sitting in an audience on the other side of a podcast, anywhere, will hear my story and see themselves in it. And that my hope is that God may use my story to change somebody else's story. And so I'm really, really grateful to be able to do that work. I speak on the topic, I do some writing. And just a couple weeks ago, I launched my third written work called Sanctuaries. In yours, I found mine. It's an anthology of 20 survivors from the South Asian context, all of us sharing our stories, many of whom are sharing their stories for the first time. So it's a really beautiful work. I'm really proud to have been a part of it.
Well, that's amazing. Yes, Seva, congratulations. That's so exciting. We definitely can't wait to hear more about that. So by the time your episode comes out, we should be able to see it, have it in our hands, and feel it. Oh, it is out. Okay, perfect. Yes. Congratulations, Seva. That's so exciting. I want to talk to you guys about, every one of you spoke about faith in your podcast and how faith was able to help you transition from where you were to where you are now. And it continues to be the driving force behind what you continue to do here in your ministry and here on this earth. So thank you for that. I want to start with Miss Carrita. Can you share with us how your story of faith shaped your perspective during your time in the NICU journey and motherhood advocacy?
Absolutely. I think just as the other two ladies spoke about, when you go through something and you get to that point and say, you know, God, I know this is for a reason. I know that there's a purpose in this, because you wouldn't let this happen for nothing. You know, you're not a God of punishment, of revenge, right? You don't punish us for things, make us suffer for no reason. There's glory on the other side. And when you get to that glory and you see, I survived this, God, what do you want me to do with this story? Right? That was kind of my thing. What should I be doing with this? And like we all share too, when other women hear your story and you hear other women's story, there's so much power and strength that comes from that. And you know that is a God ordained thing. This is not in my own strength that I talk about losing 3 babies, or, that I talk about life in the NICU, it's not in my own doing that I'm able to do that, right? I know that this is a gift that God has given me. This is a calling that God has placed on my life, and I need to be obedient to that. When we talk about hearing other women's stories and then being, a key for us to unlock our closets, to unlock our, deepest, darkest pain, for us to come out. And I want my story to be that for someone else, my testimony to serve as that for someone else. And so I think that's always my driving force, because so many women struggle in silence when it comes to miscarriage and infertility, due to shame and just feeling like, I'm not woman enough, or I'm not good enough because I can't have children, or every time I get pregnant, I lose the pregnancy, things like that. And so telling my story and being open about it and reminding other women that this is not a punishment. This is not something that's wrong with you. This doesn't make you, I was diagnosed with incompetent cervix. That was the cause of my pregnancy losses. And I tell people all the time, nothing about you is incompetent. Whatever the loss reason is, whatever the preterm labor reason is, it's not you. And you have to remember that God has a plan and a purpose for all of us. And that's just the story and the message that I want to portray to so many women, is that there's purpose in your pain, and there's work for you to do when you make it out, because there's somebody else waiting to come out as well.
When you say that, I can resonate with that. And as far as, sometimes I feel like the enemy will bog us down with that shame and that guilt. Why this happened to you because of, if you would have done this, or if you would have came from that family, or if you would have been brought up like that. So that shame kind of cripples us. Let me ask you, Stephanie, how did faith help you fight back that shame and that guilt to move forward in your healing, by getting you maybe to perhaps start writing your book, or to perhaps start moving forward, getting out of that abusive situation that you were in?
I grew up in church, but as an adult, I kind of wandered away from church. But when I started going through this with my ex, and when I left and I started seeking out for help, God was there. He started surrounding me with people. Just by reading the Bible, there were so many stories in the Bible about so many women where God uses their brokenness and he delivers them out of their situations. And that to me showed me that, okay, I'm not in this by myself. God is with me. I just need to believe. I need to believe. I need to surrender and believe and to trust. And that's what I did basically. I got real involved in my church and I really started reading the Bible and I really started seeing myself the way that God saw me. And that encouraged me to share my story so that other women could hear it and know that they are not in it by themselves and that God is with you. You know, he like I said, he uses our brokenness. This was just a season of my life. I was created for a purpose. I was created for a reason. This was my season. So I was meant for me to endure this. How I chose to deal with it was my part because God gives us choices. So how I chose to deal with it was on me, but it was for me to go through. And so when I did go through it, I chose to be obedient and to share. Just like the women in the Bible, I chose to share my story and to help other women who who struggle with low self-worth and low self-esteem, who has all these things inside of them that when they look around, they end up in these situations that nobody plans to end up in an abusive situation. Nobody plans to marry somebody who's going to abuse them. And so by writing my book, I hope that I can encourage women that it's okay to be broken on the inside, but God can use your brokenness for his glory. You just have to believe it.
Absolutely. That was so good, Stephanie. You highlighted so many things. You mentioned all the women in the Bible who were witnesses, and they came back to be a witness of how they came out to God's goodness and his grace, which leads me into my next question for Sewa. Sewa, you shared how and I want to let you give a recap of your story as well, but you shared how when you came here to the United States to go to school, you felt you were alone for the most part and trying to find your way. And throughout that process and throughout your journey, God sent you someone that helped snatch you out of the situation that you were in, going from feeling alone to now God build women of witnesses around you to save you, if you will, or to pull you out of what you thought that you may have been stuck in. Say what, can you tell us how huge that is in the faith part of knowing that, God got me. He's going to help me through.
I'll have to be honest. I think when I was going through my abuse, and especially as I was getting out, there was a lot of moments in which I was like, where was God in the middle of all of this? There was many times I felt so abandoned by God. And I think as we talked about, when I first came to the US from India, I didn't have any friends. I felt isolated, and it was kind of a perfect season of life for me to meet somebody who um, was going to give me all the things I was looking for, all the attention and all the time and all the things I was really lacking in that season. And it was easy for me to then ignore the red flags that were right in front of me. And I was started that relationship with my ex-husband from a place of need rather than from a place of contentment. Over the years, as I developed community, when it finally came time for me to speak out and tell somebody what was happening, I contacted a close friend of mine. She lived out of state, and that moment is really what changed my entire trajectory, because when I contacted her, immediately she sprung into action. Immediately she saw the situation, black and white, clear as day. When I couldn't see and when I was weak, she was strength and objectivity and logical for me. When I was scared, she was not afraid, and she was willing to, she was living in Chicago at the time, and she drove from Chicago the very next morning to come down to Georgia to be with me so that I would not be alone. And I remember she sat in my living room and she talked to my ex-husband and she said, "You will not ever do this again to her, and I will make sure of it. And so
Mm.
like that moment of seeing someone, a friend of mine, see my value when I could not see it, see what I deserved when I couldn't see it, and see a way out for me when it felt like a very impossible situation for me, I think was a big turning point. And I think now when I talk at events or talk to groups or organizations, I really talk about the value of when you are the person that it, you know, comes to know about it, like how can you be like a true friend to somebody who is in that situation. And so yeah, it was a really defining moment for me, and I'm really grateful how God, like, I love how you put it, because when I came to the country, I was isolated, I was without friends, and how God ended up giving me a community, and not just that, people who actually helped me get out of an abusive marriage and find the life of freedom on the other side.
Yeah, I love that. Man, it's so interesting how God works, how he brings everything full circle. Sometimes I feel like he isolates us because we have to cut out all the noise, right? And maybe even shut off some of our own thoughts. And then he brings us the right people, right community. And this leads me into my question for you, Carrita. Creating your advocacy for NICU families and having been in the NICU yourself, what was the driving force behind getting you to go back to the NICU that you spent so much time in?
That very thing, community. Someone to hear me, someone to see me, someone to say, I've been here. I know it's hard. You feel alone, but you are not alone. And even the same thing when you're in during, pregnancy loss and things like that, it's isolating because you don't always want to talk about it. You don't always want people to feel sorry for you or things like that. And a lot of times, people who have never gone through certain things don't really know how to support you during those times. And so being a voice of someone who has gone through those things, I've sat through the NICU. My son was in the NICU for 116 days. We've had subsequent stays in the pediatric ICU with, brain surgery, lung surgery, things like that. And so being in those seats of feeling like it's just me and my child in these walls, I'm suffocating, I'm drowning, I'm crying every 5 minutes. Um, what do I do? Who do I call? So being that for someone else was really important to me. And a lot of times it's easier to connect with someone who's not, directly related to you.
Yeah,
Sometimes family, it's hard. They're like, oh, it'll be okay. Your baby's going to come home soon. Like, it's
yeah,
fine. But to have someone that's like, okay, I got you. I know I've been there. It's
yeah,
not this objective conversation. Like, neither of us
yeah,
have anything, blocking our vision, our sight for what we're talking about here, because even you can connect this to other situations when you're in situations of, domestic violence and things like that. Sometimes it's hard to go to people that you really know first.
yeah.
Uh, for the fear of judgment or the fear of like they're going to say the wrong thing or they're going to think I'm crazy, something like that. And so
Mhm.
having someone who has gone through those things to say, I get it, I understand, was really important for me. So that was my driving force to creating a non of NICU families.
That is amazing, and I love it. I love what you do, and you're absolutely right. It takes somebody who's been through it because I think sometimes people who have not been through it, we can show empathy, but I don't think that we truly understand versus someone who says, you know what, I've been there. Stephanie, you shared a story in your episode where you said that you found yourself falling back into some of those same patterns, even when you got out of the relationship. Talk to me about what kicked into place and what made you cut off what looked good, what could have been, what you could have made work possibly. What kicked into place to say, you know what, not going back down this road anymore.
In my episode, I talked about where I started dating and I met this guy, and we were talking for a while, for maybe a month or two, and it felt good, but something inside of me kept saying it didn't feel good. I kept telling myself it felt good, but something inside of me kept saying to pay attention and not get caught up in the romance. Once I sat back and I started paying attention to the things that were happening, I started paying attention to the red flags. I started noticing that I was falling right back into the pattern that I had fought so hard to get out of. I was dating a guy that was probably was the mirror of my ex. Once I sat back and I looked at everything, I found myself starting to cower down, to dumb myself down, to not be as vocal as I had fought so hard to find my voice. I found myself losing my voice all over again. And what I did was I just stepped back and I looked at it and I told myself, I can't go back to this. I fought so hard to get out of this. And so
Yeah.
eventually I broke things off. I think it was because I was afraid of being alone.
Yeah.
You know, the outside voices were saying, hey, you should be dating. You should be doing all these things. And so I was listening to the outside voices and ignoring what was going on the inside, what God was showing me, what the Holy Spirit was showing me were the signs. And then once I started paying attention to the signs, I ended that relationship because I'm not going to go back to that. I fought so hard to get out of it.
Like, I am not going back.
I'm not going back. I mean, he was a straight narcissist. And he even said it one time, you know, a friend of mine told me I was a narcissist. I was like, yeah, when he said that, yeah, you kind of got the traits. I see them. And when he said that, I was like, yeah, I see it.
Right.
All this time I was ignoring it because of the fear of being alone. I was ignoring it when it was right there in front of me. And I was so glad that I have the discernment now to see those things and to recognize the signs. And that's what I share when I talk to so many other women. If you don't do the work, if you don't heal from it, you can look up and find yourself right back in that same situation.
Yeah.
So it's very important for them, you know, to heal and to do the work.
That's so good. Talking about healing and fighting back fear. How did you overcome the fear to get in front of people and just start telling your story just so vulnerably, so raw? How did you get over that?
Well, you know, I think talking to people, I've always felt comfortable with. It was actually sharing my story and what people might think about me, because as you know, in a lot of cases, whether it's domestic violence or sexual assault, there is a component of self-blame and shame that we put on ourselves, even though it's not our fault that this has happened. And so I think in sharing my story, there was a part of me that wondered if people would think, oh, well, she's just sharing her one side. I wonder what the other side is. And I wonder what she did to aggravate him, because these were some of the things that were actually told to me by certain people, like, well, you know, somebody doesn't just get angry like that for no reason. You must have done something to aggravate him. And so I had all these, I think, false beliefs in my mind and in sharing my story. And then I have to always think about the fact that I have a daughter with this person, and me sharing my story and putting it out there can affect her too. And just not knowing how my story will land, the triggers it might create. And I think there was just a lot of fears. And I think the biggest thing for me was I just held on to a lot of lies about myself for a long time before I finally became vulnerable. You know, I just felt like my trauma, my divorce, all of this was just a shame on me. This was going to define me. This was going to be part of my identity now. And this was going to be like the single story of my life. And when people think about me now, they're going to be like, oh, that's the girl who went through abuse and trauma, and she's broken, and her life is not able to be fixed or redeemed. And so I think, especially coming from an Indian culture where we are very, you know, critical and judgmental of people. And so I think that's a lot of the reason why people hide their issues, because they don't want people to think badly of them. So I think for me, you know, once I started sharing my story, even just in small spaces, a small group at church, I saw the impact it had. And I realized that like, this is not me. I am not creating this impact.
No.
God's spirit is moving when I share my story, and God is healing people and healing hearts. And this is definitely not in my strength. And when I saw that, that just motivated me to continue to share it. And then all the women that opened up to me as a result of it, to say, I'm so glad you said this one thing because I've been struggling with this. And because you said it, now I have hope, or now I can let that thing go.
Right.
So I think these have been the motivating factors for me.
Yeah.
But like you said, I had to work through a lot of those false beliefs first to get to that place. But I think God showed me that this isn't about you. This is part of your journey. This isn't about you. When I allowed this trial in your life, I attached its purpose to it. And now you're getting to see what that purpose is going to be, not just for you, but for the good of so many others.
That's good. That ties into what Stephanie was saying earlier. You go through it. What the enemy meant for harm, he'll use it for his good. Let me talk to you, Carrita. I want you just to share with us a little bit. Carrita talked about in her episode about being an advocate for herself. And after going through the same repeated loss, she had to say, you know what? I need to stop, change doctors, voice my own opinion because something isn't right. Carrita, talk to some moms and talk to some maybe dads who are listening right now who's afraid to take that stance and step up for themselves and say, you know what, something has to change here.
And that's it. Something has to change. When you go through the same thing so many times and you're being told, oh, it's okay, you're young, you can try again. Then you try again, and now I have another miscarriage. And then you're told the same thing, but then I have another miscarriage. So what's the missing piece to this puzzle, right? And why are you not trying to help me figure it out? And so the biggest thing for me was finding a doctor that listened to me, finding someone who, when I went in that room, their priority was my concern. What are you concerned about? What do you need from me? How can I help you, at this point? And I think sometimes when we're in medical settings, we're afraid to use our voice. We're afraid to speak up because we're thinking, well, they're the professional. They're the doctor, they're the surgeon. They've been doing this for 20 years. But we're not all textbook cases. We're not all the same. They may have seen 50 women have miscarriages, but they've never seen me. They've never looked at my medical history. They've never, asked me about my personal story or, well, what happened in the 2 or 3 days leading up to your miscarriage? Do you remember feeling a certain thing or experiencing something that was ignored? Anything. And so getting a doctor who had those conversations with me, who talked to me about, what the possibilities could be. Sometimes we do have miscarriages that are just unexplained. There's no answer, and that's very unfortunate. But I think sometimes there are answers that we just have to work a little bit harder to get. And even with my son, he was born with an encephalocele. So it's like, we talk about this in my episode as well, I believe. A part of his brain was on the outside of his skull through a little opening right between his eyes. And when I brought it to the neonatal doctors, while he was in the NICU, they said, oh, he's just super tiny because he was 1 pound, 13 ounces. He's super tiny. It's extra skin. And I'm like, that's not skin because it's pulsatile. It moves. And as he gets bigger, it gets bigger. Like, no, it'll be fine. I'm like, no. Let's get somebody look at it. And it was after the ultrasound, they saw that it was part of his brain. I just think to myself, had I not said anything, had I not, pushed harder, had I not advocated for my son, what would have happened? And so that's always what I say. Use your voice. What's the worst that can happen? I don't want to sit in silence and then I lose my life. My child loses his life, because I was afraid of what someone might say or think because I pushed too hard or I spoke up or I came off as confrontational. I don't care. I don't care. Because my life and my child's life is so much more important than what anyone in this room thinks of me when I walk out of here. And so you have to learn to be the voice no matter what.
Yes, that is so good, Carrita. When we posted just that clip, it ignited such a great conversation amongst women, and amongst women who have been in that situation, not just in the NICU, but also in relationships and in different settings, using our voice, advocating for ourselves, and going to, hey, what, let's look at that another time, or what, hey, this is not working for me. Stephanie, when you begin to use your voice, how important did you find that it was very important to continue to use your voice, although although you may have had people say, what, no, don't listen to her, she blah blah blah, she's been through this, been through that, her word is incredible. How important do you feel that it is to continue to go and be the advocate for yourself?
I feel that it's very important to be an advocate for yourself, because if you don't, who else is going to? The whole thing behind abuse is to keep you quiet. It's the silence. It's the control. The whole thing is to guilt you into silence. Because like she said earlier, you don't want people to know, okay, this is what's going on in my home. This is what's happening, behind closed doors. And then you live with the shame of it, but it's really not your shame to live with. It's really not. And so for me so when I found my voice and when I started saying, hey, I'm going to speak up, I'm going to advocate for myself, I did lose a lot of relationships because people were like, why don't you just stay quiet? You're out of it now. Why don't you just be quiet? Yeah, but how can I walk around and be free, live in freedom, live in peace when I know my fellow sister is living, another woman is living, or another man is living in the same situation that I've been delivered from. So I think it's very important for anyone who's been through anything, once they find their voice, to use it, to advocate for it, because I believe you're not by yourself. I know for a fact I'm not by myself. I know when I get up and I speak on abuse, I know when I go to different places and I share my story, that God is standing right there with me. So I'm not afraid to speak up and use my voice, because I know that He's there with me. He's protecting me. He's guiding me. I mean, like I said, I feel like this is really my purpose. I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Amen. Being a witness. I know, Sarah, you shared that you have an amazing book coming out that is out now. Looking forward, as far as your ministry and going out telling your story, how do you plan to continue growing in faith and your personal development in the year to come?
I really believe that you can't give something that you don't have, right? That you haven't developed for yourself. That your ceiling is going to be somebody else's ground floor. So I really, I'm always growing as a person, because I think this is one of the beautiful things that has come out of my healing journey, is that I've been able to see how God has used this story to work in me, to grow me, to make me more aware of my own patterns. Kind of what Stephanie was talking about, as you move forward in dating, you're able to see, like, what were some of the things I missed before, and what can I do now to not miss those things? What work can I do on myself to not miss those things? And I think, in this domestic violence work, we do a lot to help women get out of these toxic relationships. But there's a big part of me that feels like, what can we do as preventative, to ensure that young women, and especially like women that were around my age, when I met my ex-husband as a young college student, what were the things I missed, and what would I have known then that I know now would have been helpful to me? And so a lot of what I'm looking forward to doing is doing some of that preventative work. What are the things that you should look for? Green flags, red flags, and ways that you are ready as a person to be in a relationship. I think that's so important, because if you are stepping into a relationship from a place of loneliness, from a place of heartbreak, from a last relationship, from a place of need of some sort, of any kind, you are going to ignore things that are right in front of your face, and you're going to dismiss them. And then and as we know, the very thing ignored is the thing that comes back to bite us later. And
Yep.
so I think being able to give young girls, young women those tools to say, look out for these character traits, because if you see them, that could be problematic in the future. I think that's been a work that I am looking to grow into for sure in the future, especially in this next year, is just working with young college age women who are in that season of life, pursuing these lifelong relationships and going into marriage and dating seriously and all that. And I'm excited about that, because if I can prevent someone from getting into a toxic relationship to begin with, that will be even more rewarding.
Yeah, I think, man, what a great age or group of women to talk to speak with. Just to get them to think twice, or not. Sorry, I'm not trying to ruin your marriage, but their engagement or anything, but just to get them to think, make sure they're compatible. I think it's amazing. I feel like I know I got married young, and a lot of us get married young. So, just, putting out your story to make sure that if any of these red flags resonate with them, they'll say, ooh, see, I need to talk to you. Can this be fixed? There's probably questions they have in the back of their head. Okay. I want to ask you, Carrita, looking forward to the future, looking forward in all the amazing things that you are doing. I'm pretty sure you're almost done with school or close to being done with school. And Mrs. Illinois, you are doing so many amazing things in your ministry. Where do you see yourself and see your ministry going in the next year to come?
Oh my gosh. Definitely growth for sure. I've just actually been given the opportunity that just started this month to sit on a maternal health advocacy board for one of the hospitals here in Chicago. So that is something that I'll be building on this next year. It will probably be my primary focus because it is a big role. It's a new role. And so I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm excited because that's an even larger platform for me to share my story, to use my voice, to encourage other mothers to be advocates, as well as getting the chance to encourage medical professionals to be better listeners. And so I'm excited about that aspect of this work for the next year.
Wow. Let me just ask you, did you ever see yourself doing that, being on such a large board, having such a big voice in a room that you probably never imagined yourself in? Did you
Yeah.
ever?
No, but it's funny
Not a big
because
room for you.
how we say a lot of things in our lives connect. I worked in federal law enforcement. I have a master's in legal studies, so I'm used to being in these bigger settings where I'm a smaller person, being a minority woman in federal law enforcement. You have to kind of learn how to stand up tall, use your voice, speak up, and so I think that has helped me for this arena, which I never thought these two things would connect, or I would even be in this space. But looking back, I feel extremely prepared for this because of things that I've done in the past. And I thank God for allowing all this to kind of come full circle for me.
Come together. My God. Oh, congratulations, Carrita. I cannot wait. If I have something to add, I'll just email it to you. Have them look out for this. Okay. Stephanie, tell us, where do you see your ministry going? You are working on your second book. Where do you see your ministry going, taking off within the next year?
So I see my ministry going to amazing places. I'm currently working with an organization where we are talking to younger women because I did get married at the age of 18. I was a teenage mother. I married my kid's father. So we're working with this young group of women, and we are helping them to build up their self-esteem and their self-worth. So they'll feel whole inside and they won't be looking for things on the outside. And so that's what I've been doing. And like I said, I'm working on my second book as well. I'm still promoting my first book. My dream is, I have a very big dream. I would love to get an apartment complex or a 4 unit or something to that manner to where I can bring in survivors. They don't have anywhere to go because most of the shelters here where I live are overcrowded. So to have a place where they could come, or a safe house where they could come and stay, and then I could just be there to talk with them, to have counselors available for them, to help them decide on what their next move is going to be. So that's my plan this year. Like I said, I'm working with some organizations, and I'm just praying and believing it's going to happen.
Man, I love it, Stephanie. I'm sorry, you just said something to me that made me want to go back and look. When you said that most shelters are overcrowded, you're right. I was working on something with a lady with a group about that in my area, and you're absolutely right. The shelters are overcrowded. So where do they go? You guys, y'all are doing amazing things, man. You guys make me feel I need to get off of here and start doing something else. I'm like, what else am I? Lord, what else am I doing? I love it, and that is what it's all about. It's all about community. It's all about bringing your ideas to the well, bringing what you're doing to the well, and igniting someone else. I don't know about y'all. I feel ignited right now. So that's really what it's all about. It's about coming back, help putting your story out there and helping other women grow, evolve from it. Now, I have all of your information, but if you can, we just take a couple of minutes or a couple seconds real quick just to tell us, say, well, where can we find you and follow you?
Okay, so I am on socials, Save a Field on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and then you can find me at saveafields.com as well. Yeah. All my resources and everything are there as well.
Amazing. Carrita, where can we find you and follow you?
On Instagram at the P2 Project is my nonprofit organization, and Love Always Carrita is my personal page where I kind of focus on writing and blogging, and both of my websites are linked on those Instagram pages.
Amazing. Stephanie, where can we find you and follow you?
So I am on Instagram at I am SD Strickland. I am also on Facebook as Stephanie D. Strickland. I also have a website, stephaniedstrickland.com, and my book's available everywhere books are sold.
Yes, it is. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for tuning in. And thank you for being my special guest on this season 1, part 3 reunion. I appreciate you so much for coming back and sharing your story here at this well. And I want everyone to follow these ladies. I know it's towards the end of the year when this will be out. So I know that, Carrita, you have a nonprofit. Save, do you have a nonprofit?
I don't. No,
You
I
don't.
have. Yeah, no, I don't.
Okay, Stephanie.
I
No.
don't, but you can you can donate to any shelter, any women's shelter.
Even better. Yeah. So if you are looking to donate or you're looking to pour into any ministry, any nonprofit, some of these shelters, as we were just talking about earlier, Stephanie brought up, please feel free to maybe choose one of those towards the end of the year if you're looking for someone or organization to pour into for the end of the year. So just leave you that little blurb. But I want to thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Woman Witness podcast on the Woman Witness TV network. Thank you for helping us celebrate our 1 year. Until next time, perhaps you are chosen for such a time as this to tell your story, your truth. Until next time, bye-bye.